always wanted to be a statistic, didn't you? I'm a statistic now. I've been in 3 major car accidents. And I want to share a couple here with you. The first one, I was probably about, 14, 15. And me and a friend got together, and back then, maybe it's still popular today, but it was very popular back then. You got in the car and you drove around. You just drove you drive for hours all over the place. Of course, gas was 75 cents a gallon, right? You wouldn't, probably you have 2 jobs today to do that. Well, I got with a friend, and he said, let's go out and party a little bit. I'll drive. Sounds good to me. So we're out and driving. He's drinking a little bit, actually quite a lot. And he drank so much that he started to go a little nuts. And he started to drive extremely fast. And I can remember, it was nighttime. I can still see the road today. Everything was just flying by, and I kept saying, slow down. Slow down. Hey, slow down. And he would not listen. He went, every time I said slow down, he thought I said faster, because it went faster and faster. Honest to God, I heard these words, put on your seatbelt. And I grabbed the seatbelt and I put it on. It wasn't even seconds later. We hit, we went over an embankment. I don't know what we hit, but we went off the road. That car flipped multiple times. I don't remember. All I remember is I was sitting in the car like this, spinning. So it felt like I was kind of like a Kennywood, right? So it wasn't too bad. I'm spinning. My friend was in the back seat, in the front seat, in the back seat, hits me in the face. And he goes over here. He's all over the place. I'm just enjoying the ride. Well, when the car lands, I look over to my right, and there's the road. It lands on its side. I was fine. I truly believed that night I was going to die. I think that was the night that I wouldn't be here today. Sister Linda, can you throw that picture up there? Now, listen, I know I've gotten a lot better looking since those days. I get that. But you notice, so a few hours before this car accident, back in the 80s, you would go, there was photographers all over the place. So you didn't have these cell phones where everybody just took a picture. They came to town and you scheduled an appointment. So I scheduled an appointment. I think it was Sparkles at the time, across from Frogs. And I got this picture taken. When my mom went to pick him up a few weeks later, the photographer said, I don't know what happened to this picture. There's an exposure. Something's wrong. I did several other people, and not one person came back like this. Notice the glow to the right? That pinkish? My mom said, Rick, that was your guardian angel. Aunt Rose, I don't know if you remember this or not, that car accident. You do remember? I'm getting a thumbs up. I ran this picture through a sophisticated software to look at it. It says, I can't explain it. I truly believe God said I was with you that night, and I'm the one that told you, put on your seatbelt. It didn't end in loss. It ended in God saying, I'm here. I did it. We can leave it there for a second. I was in a second car accident. So I worked at a job called Nichols Bakery, and probably one of the hardest jobs. I wish Brother Alan Marino was here. I would have him verify something for me. But I'll have to just go off of what I remember over 30 years ago. It was a tough job. I never knew bread could be so heavy, but it's quite heavy when you pile it on a rack. And the hours were just horrendous. I would get up at 2 in the morning, get home at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. And that's when my mom was sick. So most of the time I would leave Nichols Bakery at East Liverpool, drive to Pittsburgh Allegheny Hospital, stay until midnight, drive back to Weirton with my uniform on, my boots on, lay in bed for about an hour and a half. I wouldn't even take my boots off, my uniform off. Wouldn't do it for a couple, 2, 3 days. I would go on a couple hours of sleep, an hour of sleep. I did that for 2 years. Horrendous job. But one night I got up, 2:30 in the morning like normal, boots on, ready to go, jump in the car. I'm driving, heading north on Route 7, East Liverpool, right past the rest area there, if you're familiar with that, as you start to go up that hill. Right before you get in, I think that's Wellsville. I fell asleep. I'm not exactly sure where I fell asleep. I don't know if I fell asleep in Empire and made it that far, if I fell asleep right. I have no idea. But what I do know is I wrecked. I crashed. And I went off the road, and I went in between, if you could throw that photo up there. I went in between. Now, this sign wouldn't have been there. There was two places I could have went. I can't remember because it's 30 years ago. But I went in between that guardrail and that wall right there without hitting either one. I went straight through. I was going, 50 fast. I don't know how fast. I was going 55 or more. And I went straight through. In the car, I remember when I woke up, I was already in between those. And the car started to slow down. I think there was mud, and it slowed me down, and I came and I just bumped a tree. Well, over that, beyond that tree was an embankment. I mean, it was a straight off. And could you go to the next one? See, it was either that one or that one. Either case, it was in between. When the tow truck driver was the police officer came, he said, "Boy, you're lucky." He goes, we pulled a guy out of here not a couple of years ago. He went over that embankment, and he didn't make it. But I made it. And my friend, Wes Owens, he worked with me after he found out I went through this accident. He said, "Rick, what's going on?" He said, "I couldn't have went through that with my eyes open." Because how in the world could you go through there with your eyes closed? It was the Lord. It was absolutely the Lord. Not a scratch on me. Imagine if I would have hit that thing. That seems like a death sentence to me. One more. Now, this isn't a car accident, but what I discovered is I woke up, like I said, 2:30 in the morning, but when I ended up going back home after that car accident, and I discovered that I had a gas leak in the house. Major gas leak, and I think Sonny remembers that. And the fact of the matter is, if I wouldn't have gotten up early, I might not have gotten up at all, because I would have just slept through the night. Because of me getting up early, I got out of that gas leak, and by the time I got home, it got figured out. My house could have exploded. I would have died in it. Once again, you never know what God is doing, even when things go wrong. Right? But you got to look for the hand of the Lord. You got to say, "Lord, show me the purpose in this time." And I see that, to me, I see this stuff clearly. And maybe you're out there thinking, Rick, that's all a coincidence. Maybe you're right. If you are, well, I got a lot of them in my life. I've had a lot of them. And I'm not even sharing all of them with you. I'm sharing some of them with you. Let's get back into where I left off. If you remember when I left off last time, I talked about my mom and how she was laying on. I want to revisit this for some of you who weren't here. She was dying of cancer, and I knew she was in her final days. And I remember walking into a room, and she's laying on a gurney. She's flat like that. She has her bandana on. Remember the bandana she always wore? And I looked at her, and I see her there, and her eyes were blue and crystal clear. They were open. I thought, wow, her eyes are so clear. They're so blue. They look beautiful. It looked heavenly. And I walked up to her, and I leaned over, and I looked her in the eye, and I said, "Mom, you know you're going to be with Jesus soon." She couldn't speak. I don't remember why, but she just shook her head, "Yes." I said, "Are you ready?" She shook her head, and she smiled. I knew she's total peace. So I told her a couple things. I said, "Mom, when you take your last breath and you go, I want you to follow peace." I said, "Nothing can mirror the peace of Jesus." I said, "Follow that peace." I said, "Will you do that for me?" She shook her head, yes. I said, "I have one more thing to request of you." So when you get to heaven and you see the King of Kings and the great I Am, the Prince of Peace, the one who died on the cross for me and you, when you see him and you hug him, I want you to whisper to him, tell him, "Please have mercy on my son, Rick." Because he needs help bad. I said, "Will you do that for me?" I said, "Because Mom, I want to make it, but I don't know." And she shook her head and she smiled, yes. And today I'm going to tell you how I got to reply back from heaven. I believe anyhow. You may not believe it. That's fine. You don't have to. But I believe it. Before I go on to the message I received back, I want to share with you about my brother. I think, and sis, you can verify this, I think Mom's death was, it was hard on everybody. I really think it was hardest on Dave. I really do. And can you put that picture up there? There you go. Look at that. I'll tell you what, man, I've gotten so much better looking with time. Aren't you guys blessed you get to look at this versus that? But my brother is over there on the left. Big smile, big guy, tough. I mean, Dave, my brother Dave, in my mind, he was a ninja. He never cried, never see Dave cry. Never. And I remember just growing up, I always thought, yeah, you mess with me, you're going to deal with him. Because he'd fight in the drop of a hat. Just fight. He loved to fight. And so I would use that to my advantage. Right? You pick on me, you're going to deal with him. And my brother, just to give you a little flavor of who he was, he loved recreation. He loved the outdoors. He loved good times. And he loved recreational marijuana. Loved it. And he would come pick me up and go, hey, you want to go for a ride? Like, of course I want to go for a ride. I mean, we're going to be in a vehicle, windows up. We're talking with, Cheech and Chong here, right? You roll the windows down, the smoke goes out. Now, I will tell you, I never inhaled. I didn't do it. No how, no way. But I loved it. I would go with him. I enjoyed being with him. He had a favorite four-letter word. No, it wasn't love. Starts with an F, and you get the picture. He used it all the time. He used to call me, you little... Some of you said it, didn't you? You said it in your mind. Well, he got cancer. And I think he knew his time was up. He calls me one day and says Rick, I'm going to make you a beneficiary on a life insurance policy. I said, why? Because that's not like him at all. He goes, well, I just need to. I said, okay. By the way, he let it lapse. So just so everybody knows, I didn't get any money of any type. One day I picked him up, took him for a ride, and we were just chatting. As I was driving, I don't remember where we were going, where I was taking him, but at that point doesn't matter. But I remember the Lord told me, take him to your mom's gravesite. So I just was driving. I didn't tell him. He goes, where are we going? I said, just for a ride. I drive out. My mom's buried out the Knoxville Fire Department, that cemetery there. So as I pull into the parking lot, he goes, no, you little... I knew he loved me. He goes, no, I don't want to be here. I said, you need to be here. I said, God told me to bring you here. I said, he goes, I'm not getting out of the car. I said, you're getting out of the car and you're going to walk over. He'd never been to the grave. It was a year or two after. To get over there. I saw my brother cry for the first time. I saw his humanity. I saw that. He just wept. And then we got back in the car and he stopped calling me that name, his nickname for me. And he told me some other things. He said, I want to tell you some things. Things got real in the car and they wouldn't have gotten real if that wouldn't have happened. He got worse and worse and worse, and he went on hospice. And matter of fact, my sister took care of him for a while, did a great job, but it got too much for her to manage. We would go help. Sonny would change him, and of course, my sister would help in it. But he finally was transported, because he stayed at her house on hospice. Then he went to the old Ohio Valley hospice, and I'll tell you what. I'll tell you this. I didn't want to be there again to watch somebody die. If you've ever watched somebody pass away, it's not easy. It's hard. I didn't want to see that again. Even though the hand of the Lord was in things, it's like, Lord, I can do without this. So I told the Lord, Lord, I just would like to inform you that I will not be present at his last breath. Got it, Lord? Good. We understand each other. So me and Sonny and the girls, we go out with a friend. We're at a Mexican restaurant. I still remember it to this day. It's the one on Pennsylvania Avenue, not Pennsylvania Avenue, Lover's Lane, Steubenville. We're having dinner, enjoyable dinner. And I hear in my heart the Lord say, go see your brother. Okay, I can do this. So I told my friend, I said, I got to go. I need to go see Dave. I feel like I just need to go see him. And Sonny could verify this. I said, well, we need to go. So we get in the car, drive there. I just think I'm going to see Dave. I walk into that room, and Dave is actively dying. And I can remember thinking to myself, that's not the deal we had, Lord. Remember, I'm not going to be present. And I remember Sonny asked me, you probably remember this. So what are you, because I told her about this. So she said, what are you going to do? I said, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to stay here. I can't leave. And so she said, okay. And she took the girls. And Jubilee even will tell you today, she said it horrified her because it was active. And so they left, and it's just me and him. And I walk up to him. I grab his hand. I said, Dave, I'm here. His breath changed. I knew he heard me. It calmed down. I grabbed the Bible. I opened it. I just sat there and read to him. And his breath changed. And the Lord ministered to me at that moment and said, Rick, this isn't about you. It's about him. And Rick, sometimes in life, it requires you to suffer for somebody else. Yes, it hurts you, but it's for him. And I did that for you. It suffered me for you, but I did it for you. He passed away probably, I think you just walked in the door from Steubenville to Marlin Heights. You walked in the door, he was gone. It happened that quick. I believe the Lord wanted me there. Somehow, some way, I believe Dave wanted me there. But once again, God was faithful. I was at dinner and God says, go see him. Now tell me, how much of a coincidence is it at that moment, at that time, that you hear something in your heart say, go see your brother right now. I knew it was urgent. I needed to get there. And then literally, if I would have waited another 10 minutes, I would have missed the whole thing. That is God. And that is the grace of God. Not too long after my brother passed away, just probably 4 years ago, my dad got sick. I want to tell you a little bit about my dad here. My dad, they called him Jeep. He's from Toronto, right? Eugene Webster Prosser. That was his real name, Eugene, but they called him Jeep. Everybody in Toronto has a nickname. Mine was, you know what it was. And they had Frog, they had Racker, Catfish, Hunky. Any other ones I'm missing, Therese? I mean, there was a bunch of them. But my dad would always tell me, because he would say, you know, I was named after the dictionary, Webster, because he thought he knew it all. And actually, if you knew him, you'd thought, yeah, he does think he knows it all. He really didn't, but he sure did. And can you put that picture up there? There he is. Look at him over to the left there. Look at him. That ornery smile. They called my dad the Toronto Tribune. Because if you didn't want somebody to know something, do not tell him. Because he would spread it all over Toronto. I remember when he found out your mom's name was Dorothy. Oh my gosh. So my dad could be just what's that word I'm looking for? Sarcastic. That's the word I'm looking for. Sarcastic. And he was the type of guy. I want you to hear this because this is important. So I'm not trying to dishonor him here. I'm trying to give you a feel for what he was like. He was different for sure, but he was one of these guys, grumpy all the time. I'm just grumpy. Grumpy. What are you grumpy? I don't know. It's sunny out today. Be grumpy. He'd wake up in the morning. My mom would say, "Good morning, Jeep." He'd go, "What's good about it?" Mr. Scrooge, right? That was him. And he was like that all the time. Now, when he got nice, when he would get nice, that's because he found out something juicy, like Dorothy. I can remember him standing on the corner, that cigarette hanging out of his mouth. He used to smoke them Camels. Remember the Camels? And the ash would be that long. He'd just sitting there, and he'd get this smile when your mom and dad would walk by, and he would look at her and he goes, "Well, hello, Dorothy. How are you today?" And she would just cringe and just go, "I can't stand you." From what I understand, his friend Racker, that was his best friend, Racker. Racker said, "I don't even like him. I feel bad for the guy." I think he might have said that one time. That was my dad. That's just who he was. And if you go back, like I said, everybody had nicknames in Toronto. And my mom had a nickname for him too. She had a nickname for him. It started with an A. Let's play a word game here. Started with an A, ended with a hole, and it wasn't adorable. You get the picture. So I'd literally call her. I'd say, "Hey, Mom, what's going?" Because after they got divorced, they were buddies, they had friends, and they were on and off. They liked each other, didn't like each other. And I'd call Mom. I said, "Mom, what's going on?" Well, she said, "I'm sitting here with." Yeah, we're playing Yahtzee. Oh, okay. So what's he going to do? I don't know what he's going to, and she'd use that. It's like it was his name. Believe me, he earned it. He earned it. Later in life, I found out this about my dad. He didn't have it easy. I used to question a lot about him because I didn't like him either, to be honest with you. I couldn't stand him half the time. I would call him, and it was literally out of obligation because I didn't want to talk to him. Because he would always, "Well, how come you haven't called lately?" Right there is why I haven't called lately. But that's just how he was. But I learned something about him later on in life, and that he didn't have an easy life. He was in the war. He was in the Korean War. He got a Purple Heart. He was shot. He told me a story. He wouldn't tell you much about it. It was hard to drag out of him because it just brought back too many memories. He told me a story one time where he was walking with a friend of his in the jungle, and he said, "Next thing I know, I'm laying on the ground." He goes, "I look around." He goes, "There's my friends scattered all over the place." Can you imagine seeing that? He told me a story one time that he said back then they would strap bombs to a 4 or 5-year-old child and run them up to the soldiers to blow you up. He had to shoot children. I don't know about you, but if I had to do that, I'd probably drink pretty heavily as well. And maybe I would say, "What's good about this morning? What is so good about today?" Just maybe, just maybe. See, you don't always know what somebody's walking in, what battle they're fighting. And the Lord had to teach me, "Rick, love your enemies," because I didn't like him. He was an enemy at the time. He said, "Love your enemy. Learn to love him." And over time I did. He started to come to church. He slowly started to change, and it was like moving a barge, one of them big barge ships out there. It's like you have it like this, it's turning slowly. "Come on, Jeep, you can do it. You can do it. Come on." So him and I started spending a lot of time together. My mom's gone, my brother's gone, so he's in line, and we go to church quite a bit. My dad, I think if I remember, he got baptized. And I remember he was going to church with me, and there was a gentleman there by the name of Elisha Robinson, Brother Elisha, and some of you probably know him, and then Elder Mike Smith. And Brother Elisha, he loved Brother Elisha, and he was ministered to my father. But as my dad would walk into the church, Elisha would stand at the door like this and go, "You're going to greet me before you come in." And we practiced kissing each other on the cheek. It's a holy kiss. He'd say, "Give me a kiss right here, Jeep, right here." And he'd go, "I don't kiss men." He goes, "Give me a kiss right here." "No." He goes, "Well, then you can't come into church." So he'd go, "All right, come on in." But every time my dad got sick, he'd call me and he'd say, I'm in the hospital. He was in the hospital quite a bit. I said, okay, what's going on? And he'd tell me, and he would always end with this: tell Brother Elisha and tell Elder Mike. I tell him, and they both run over to see him. Part of his salvation process. One day, my dad got pretty sick. He became sepsis. And the doctor came out to me and his sister Bev and said, we need to do surgery. He's dying. I said, okay. I said, well, what do you got to do? They told me. I said, okay. I said, can you give us a few hours here to think about it? He said, no, you have 5 minutes. I said, if we don't do something in 5 minutes, because he's not going to make it. He said, I don't know if he's going to make it now. So I looked at Bev, and we both came to the agreement of do it. So they did the surgery, and it's a complicated surgery. I had to do something with his bowel, like kind of similar to my mom. And ultimately, he went through a lot of complications, but he did finally start to recover. And when he finally was recovering, we could have a conversation. I'll never forget, he looked at me. I can see it to this day. He looks over at me, he says, why didn't you let me die? Geez, what does that do to you? I said, Dad, because I didn't believe it was the Lord for letting you die. I think you were supposed to still be around. So I don't know. Then I questioned, well, did I make the right decision? Did we make the right decision? Should we just let him go? Well, later that proved that it was the right decision. He was supposed to be around a little bit longer, as you're going to learn here. As he was recovering, he was getting better and better, but he had a long stay in the hospital. But he was to a point that I would go visit him, and he was pretty much back to normal. He was eating, and they were giving him marijuana pills because he couldn't eat. So they were giving him marijuana pills to give him the munchies. He's like, well, I'd rather have the real thing, where I can smoke it. But I remember one day, I go over to visiting, and if you remember I think they still have it down there, but they have the TVs. They're on that arm, and they're sitting there, they're kind of real small, and he's watching that, and I'm sitting in a chair, he's in bed, he's up like that, and we're just watching whatever, not even talking, nothing. Out of the blue, he goes, God said you're going to be okay. When he said that, it hit me like bricks. I've never heard that from him. Anything he ever hit me with bricks is, I can't stand you. You're mean. I couldn't stand him. But it touched my spirit. And I looked over and I said, what did you say? He said, God told me to tell you, you're going to be okay. That was a message straight from heaven. And God sent it by Jeep Prosser. That isn't how he talks. That's totally out of character for him. And he had no idea, and nobody did at that time. I was going through a very difficult spiritual time. Very difficult. I was questioning things. I was questioning even if God is real. I was having a difficult time. And I found myself being deeply angry. I was just angry inside. I was frustrated. I was beginning to hate life. You go, Rick, but all that stuff you saw doesn't matter. You can still get angry, and you can see all the miracles. The Bible talks about when Lazarus was in the grave. One of the rich guy was there, and the rich guy says, send somebody from the grave to tell my brothers about this horrible place. And Lazarus said, or I think it was Abraham that said, no. And the rich guy said, but listen, if they rise from the dead and go tell my brothers, they'll listen. They said, if they don't listen to the prophets and Moses, they won't listen even if someone rises from the dead. And I have found that to be true. I saw all these miracles. I saw God's hand, everything I shared with you last time. And yet here I am questioning everything. Questioning everything. And you know why that was? Because life didn't turn out how I thought. I was at a place in my life that it wasn't where I wanted to be. I thought by the time I was here, things were going to be like this. Yet they were like this. And when you are there and you live in that land, it produces depression, it'll produce anger, frustration, hatred, and that's where I was because I thought life should have been different. I felt like in some areas of my life, I got a raw deal from God. God you gave me a raw deal here, Jesus. I thought that that was the case. Listen to this. There are two things when you get in life where things don't turn out the way you think they should. There's two things that can happen. You can choose to live there and become angry and frustrated, or you can find the grace of God in that situation. Lord, what would you have me to do in this situation? What grace? Mark 14:36. And he said, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away from me. What did he say? Dad, all things are possible for you. Take this cup away. Did you know that this is the only scripture in the Bible where Jesus prays for himself directly? And that prayer wasn't answered. Because what was the next line? Nevertheless, not my will, but what you will. What happened there is simply this. The Father said no. This is the way it has to be. And see, where I failed personally is I never said nevertheless. I never went to nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Lord, help me to find the grace in where I am in life. Instead, I clung to, Lord, this is where I should have been. This is where I should have been. I felt like I failed in areas. I felt like things have fallen apart in certain areas. And I became that failure. I became the one. I said, I'm just a failure. I'm no good. I'm nobody. Well, I tell you what, that's a horrible place to live. The word nevertheless, that's where grace begins. When you can say, nevertheless, Lord, not my will, but yours be done, and walk in what you need to walk in, that's where grace begins. The Bible says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives do I give to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled nor fearful. That's John 14:27. When I heard those words, God said, you're going to be okay. It did something. It gave me peace. As a matter of fact, for years to come, because I ran into I was angry, so angry. I can remember being in certain places saying, Lord, you told through my dad, you said I'm going to be okay. Lord, I don't feel like I'm going to be okay. Am I truly going to be okay? Was that truly a message? It was okay. It did turn out to be okay. I started to see things line up, come together. There's some choices I had to make. There's some things I had to do differently, but I started seeing things line up and come into alignment. And I started seeing God work through some things. It turned out to be okay. During that conversation with my dad, he told me also, he said, God said you're going to be okay, but then he went on to tell me, God told me some other things too. And I said, well, what did he tell you? He says, I'm not allowed to tell you. Now, tell me, is that Jeep Prosser? No way. I said, what do you mean you can't tell me? He goes, God told me I'm not allowed to reveal this other stuff. Well, now that intrigued me. I go, well, I got to get this out of him. So I said, I don't think, Dad, he would mind you telling me. I mean, he did say I was going to be okay. So I'm sure he wants you to tell me just a little bit more. I'm thinking, I got to get this out of him. And he goes, no, I cannot tell you. So I pressed him and pushed him a little bit. And he yelled at me. He said, I'm not telling you. Okay, well. And I thought, well, I knew he had an encounter with God because that was not in his character. So a few years later, we're driving down the road and it was probably about 2 years later. I remember I'm driving with him and I said, Dad, do you remember a few years back how you said God told me I was going to be okay? He goes, yeah. I said, do you remember the other part that there was more to the story? He goes, yeah, I do. I said, do you remember what God told you? I'm just checking everything out here. Yeah, I remember exactly what it was. Great. So what was it? He said, I told you I cannot tell you. Again, those of you who know Jeep Prosser, you know that is significant. That's a big deal. I said, well, can you do me a favor then? He goes, what's that? I said, would you write down some of your experience, what you saw? And he goes, yeah, minus the part that I'm not allowed to tell you. Darn, I thought maybe I had him in writing, but I didn't. Can you go to the next one? That's what he wrote. It's chicken scratch, can't read it. You have to have a decipherer or someone who interprets that language, which I happen to be that person. I was able to read it. But he wrote what it said there. And I'm not going to read it to you. We don't have the time. But he wrote down, and that was 2 or 3 years later, he had an encounter with the Lord. Well, every good thing comes to an end. My dad got sick again, went into the hospital multiple times. And can you go to that next picture too? I wanted to show everybody that one. There you go. There is that church. Probably this year wasn't too long after this, he passed. He went to the hospital again. He was on dialysis. And the Lord told me he needs to come off dialysis. I said, Jesus, what? I said, do you understand when you take somebody off of dialysis? I mean, you're signing their death warrant. It's a bad deal. I said, Lord, and I believed in my heart he was supposed to come off. I'm like, how do I do this and not feel like I killed the poor guy? I mean, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want this regret, Jesus. Remember, Elder Mike Smith come over to see me, and I told him, I said, I believe he's supposed to come off, but how do I do that? He said, the Lord will give you an answer. So I went and talked to the doctor. I said, do you think he needs to come off of dialysis? I think he had a stroke. She goes, oh, no, he didn't have no stroke. He needs to stay on dialysis. I said, okay. I said, let's do that then. Half hour later, she come back. She says, you know what, you're right. He did actually have a stroke, and he does need to come off of dialysis. This is it. I mean, it's not worth doing it. I said, okay. And then Denise and I, we agreed to that, and I think Bev was there. We all three agreed to it, so it became an agreement. I had knew beforehand that he needed to come off, but I didn't want to make that call. Well, he went downhill, and then I remember they called, the hospital called and says, your dad's unconscious. I went over to see him. I thought, this is it. He's going to die. Poor guy's going to die. So I called the family, and remember Trish, I called you and Paul. I said, hey, if you guys want to see him, you need to get down here and see him because I don't think he's going to be around much longer. I don't know who called me. You might have called me, Trish, I came over. I come over there. He's awake and alert, blue eyes. I mean, he's kicking his feet, and I'm thinking, this guy just made me a liar. They come there and thinking, they're looking at me like, I thought you said he was dying. He looks fine to us. I'm like, he wasn't like that half hour ago. This is different. I remember I texted you and I said, my dad's alert and awake. She goes, oh, well, that's great. And then I texted her again. I wish I'd have kept the text. I texted her again and I said, he's not going to be around much longer. And she replied back, why would you say that? You just said he's doing good. I said, that's the problem. He's doing too good. I said, his eyes are crystal clear. I said, he's going to be going. And after you guys left, I think I got another call that evening. He was totally unconscious again. And that was a Saturday, if I remember right. That was a Saturday. So literally like at 1 o'clock, he was alert. I mean, kicking his feet. I'm going home. To unconscious again. And while I was over there talking to him because I'm amazed. I'm like, wow, you're going home and you're looking great. He kept saying, I'm going home. I go, well, we'd love to get you home. I really believe what he was saying is I'm going home. Because periodically he would do this. We were having a normal conversation. He would look up at the ceiling. I go, what are you looking at? He goes, Jesus. I said, you see him? He goes, yeah. I said, what's he saying? Does he have anything to tell us? He said, no. And then he'd come back to the conversation. We'd talk and look at each other, and we're talking about going home. I mean, normal conversation. And then he'd look up at the ceiling again. I go, is he back? He goes, yeah. I said, is he saying anything? He looked at me, he says, yeah, he says, you're a good guy. Okay. Then he says he'll see me later. Like I said, about 5 o'clock or so, he was unconscious, and he never woke up again. I stayed with him. Me and Denise stayed with him. We're taking turns from, I think, Saturday till Wednesday. Wednesday is when he passed away. And my dad would, he was, like I said, he was totally, his eyes were closed all the time. He just would not communicate with you. He's totally unconscious. And I remember going over and talking to him, but just never any communication back. And I remember Denise and I were just staying night and day, staying with him. I'd stay there all night. Sometimes I'd stay there with her all night. There's a few times when I was by myself, and it was at night, he would start breathing differently, which I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to go. This is it. I'd run over to him, start praying with him, say, Lord, I'm going to be here with him. And then he'd just start breathing normal again. It happened to me 3 or 4 times. I'm like, what are you doing to me here? Are you going or are you staying? What are you doing? So that Wednesday, Denise and I were talking, which, by the way, is my sister. And she said, man, I got to go back to work, because she's working at Frogs. She said, I got to go back to work. I said, I got to go back to work too. So she said, well, you know what? I'm going to go to work tonight. And then, and I said, well, I'll stay here, Denise. I'm going to stay until about 9 or 10 o'clock tonight, because this was like, I don't know, 3:30-ish, something like that. So I'm going to stay here, and I just have to leave tonight. So after she left, I'm sitting there on the couch, and I'm working, and I got up, I went over to him, and I grabbed his hand, and I said, Dad, I got to tell you, I love you. I got to go back to work tomorrow. So I can only stay here till about 9 o'clock. And I'm having this conversation. He's not responding back. He's unconscious. I said, right now, I think it was like, by that time when I said that, it was 4:30-ish. I think it was 4:30-ish. And I said, Dad, I got to go back to work tomorrow. I said, I don't know if you want me here when you pass. But if you do, you have until 9 o'clock tonight. Now, I felt a little bad about doing that, right? I felt like I was rushing him off or something. But I wanted to be honest with him. And I said, you have until 9 o'clock tonight. So I go sit down and I call her. And we're talking. She goes, how's things going? I'm telling her. And before God, literally, his eyes sprung open. And I went, oh, I got to go. Remember, I think I pretty much hung up on you. I got to go. And I ran over there. I looked at his eyes. They were crystal clear. He had blue eyes. I never see it was crystal clear. And he was fixated on a corner. And I prayed with him. The Bible says that the window to the soul is through the eyes. And if you've ever watched somebody pass away, their eyes go dim. You see that life leave. His eyes were crystal clear. I could see he was there. And as he was departing, I saw him depart because I saw the eyes go from bright to dim. A tear rolled down his face. I went, oh God. He didn't want to go. And the Lord spoke to my heart and said, no, you have no idea what he was seeing. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it entered into the heart of man what God has prepared for those that love him. He said he is seeing things that are unspeakable. You can't even comprehend right now. That was a joyful tear. He's with me. I believe G. Prosser, Eugene Webster Prosser, went to be with the Lord. Now, my closing here, in part 1, I compared Sonny and I's life to Sister Linda. That's where you want the computer to be on. The National Lampoon's Vacation. Oh, not yet. Yeah, go back. That's all right. Well, you know what's coming, but I'm going to give it to you anyhow. I compared our life to National Lampoon's Vacation. If you ever watched that movie with Chevy Chase, that wild adventure, the ups and downs, in and out. In other words, everything didn't go exactly how you planned. Well, that was my life. And it's been like that all the time, all the time. And honestly, this part 2's been no different. It seems like everything went wrong, yet everything went right. And it turned out that I'm okay, just like God said. But I will tell you this, the longer I walk with him, the more I realize he's not just along for the ride. He's the one holding the map. If you'll let him guide you, if you'll look for his grace, he'll guide you. He'll help you. So once again, let's sum it up in this picture. Can we do it again? Holiday road. You get it. Praise the Lord. Thank you for coming.